The Summer Games Minute, brought to you by Mass Mutual. For most professional athletes, versatility means they can play a few different positions in a single sport. For Babe Dietrichson-Zaharias, versatility means dominance across the entire spectrum of sport. In the 1932 Summer Games in Los Angeles, Zaharias won gold in the 80-meter hurdles and the javelin throw, plus she got a silver in the high jump. Running, throwing, jumping wasn't enough for Babe, so she became a competitive billiards player, then jumped into professional golf, winning 10 major championships, all the while making a few pitching appearances in Major League Baseball spring training games. Mass Mutual understands the nuances in how women want and need to manage their finances. With quality product solutions and guidance, a Mass Mutual financial professional can help you plan for both short-term and long-term money goals. Learn more and get started at massmutual.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
The Athletic. Has another MotoGP 2025 super team been created? After Ducati brought in Marc Marquez alongside Pecco Bagnaia, KTM signed everybody, now Aprilia has paired up Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi for its 2025 lineup, replacing Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Viñales. It's not a massive shock that Aprilia completed its set of announcements with Bezzecchi. That had been heavily rumoured for a while. We kind of saw that one coming. But when the news was announced, it was still quite a big moment of going, wow, Aprilia really has landed on its feet in this rider market. That's what we're going to be discussing on the Race MotoGP podcast this week, plus all the other rider market repercussions. I'm Matt Beer. With me as usual are Val Khorounzhiy and Simon Patterson. Val, I'm going to go to you first. What's your gut reaction to the thought of Bez plus Martin at Aprilia?
I don't know. That's an annoying first answer and a gut reaction, but I genuinely don't know because...
You're just too thoughtful. You don't have snap gut reactions.
Oh, I have plenty of gut reactions. Not like the other one. Most of them I just
He's going to have a gut
voice.
reaction.
I think the thing is, I think it's good. I think it's the right decision to take. I think he is, as I've mentioned before on this podcast, I think the strategy of betting on the upside of Marco Bezzecchi's performances is not only a good one, but a very logical one when you already have one sure thing next to him in Jorge Martin. And, Maverick Viñales' decision basically took any sort of continuity out of Aprilia's hands, more or less. They couldn't keep their lineup. So Bezzecchi made sense. If he doesn't work out, you still have Jorge Martin. You're fine. And if he does work out, you have an incredible MotoGP lineup. I don't know how I actually feel about the chances of him working out. I think pretty good, but I have to see indications that whatever's happening this year isn't fundamental outside of the bike specifically. Like, it has to be not fundamental to the new tire, not fundamental to whatever else might be going on, because, the tire isn't going back to the way it was.
I don't think that this year is indicative of Bez and his actual level. He's far too talented. We've seen in the past that he is actually very good. But unfortunately, to back up Val to an extent, I'm not really sure what's going to happen next year either, or how it's going to work out. I think we don't know the level of the Aprilia. And that's the question more than anything to do with either him or Jorge Martin. We have this bike that on occasion looks really good and has riders that on occasion look really good, but they're not consistent. And I don't know whether or not that means that it needs an uptake in the talent on the bike, or whether the bike itself is what's causing the inconsistency. I mean, I look at the Aprilia situation a little bit the way that I look at the KTM situation right now, where we thought that Brad Binder was doing a really good job but being a bit inconsistent on a bike that was all right. Then Pedro Acosta got on it, and oh wait, no, it turns out the bike is actually really good, and maybe it's Binder that's been a bit inconsistent, not the machinery. It's going to take a few races next season to figure that out, to see whether or not that's, the bike of the riders that they have right now. Fortunately, we've got two really good data points because we're going to have Martin and Bezzecchi. It's going to take a while to figure it out, but it seems like it's a bike that you can adapt to fairly quickly, despite Maverick Vinales' long process. But I think that's more about Maverick than anyone else. So we're going to need a bit of time to see. It could be the smartest move that anyone's ever made because the bike is a bit of a hidden gem, or it might be that the bike is at the level right now that it's at, which in that case will be a disappointment for Martin, but it won't really be a disappointment for Bezzecchi, because all it means is that he goes from being really fast sometimes but a bit inconsistent on a satellite Ducati to being really fast sometimes but a bit inconsistent with a factory paycheck.
It's the big question around Aprilia, and I feel like we've fluctuated a lot on this podcast in the last few months, possibly years, over how good that bike is. And there's definitely been times when we've been firmly of the impression that the Aprilia is an absolute gem, really good aero, very good on certain tracks in certain circumstances particularly, and it just needed riders who are a little bit more consistent, a little bit more proven, because as much as Espargaro has been the underdog hero of the decade, you still don't necessarily know what his ultimate level is. Based on his career so far, he's done some incredible things, but for him to become a sort of outside title contender was still kind of against the script. And Vinales, we talk a lot about Vinales, and sometimes it's about him dominating, and the other 20 times a year it's about him being 17th or somewhere he shouldn't be. So yeah, Aprilia has been a hard one to judge, and I feel on top of that, Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta have this year made us question everything we thought we knew about anything in MotoGP in terms of which riders and which bikes are good. So yeah, it's a bit, in theory, Aprilia has just signed the two people who mounted title bids last year on satellite Ducatis, one of whom is now leading the championship on a satellite Ducati this year. That's a phenomenal pair of riders to sign. But you're right, there are an awful lot of questions marks about whether this will work still. And like you said at the outset, Val, one of them is about Bezzecchi's form, because after looking so good last year, he just hasn't in 2024 so far. And you actually put that question to Aprilia team principal Massimo Rivola, who, bless him, thank you for this, Massimo, went straight into a media call, didn't wait till the race, but straight after the announcement, put himself up on a Teams call for the assembled media, including us. And you asked him, basically, which Bezzecchi is he expecting to get this next season?
Yeah, it's a good point. When a rider 1 year perform in such a good way and the following year is not the same, you start wondering if that means not enough talent, or if there are some other issues that could come from different parts, not necessarily technically or whatever. At the end, my feeling is that the real bad is the one of last year and not that of this year. And for this season, I still hope that we keep the fake, they keep the fake to get better result for us. But I trust in his speed and his talent quite a lot.
So it feels like Rivola's got the same approach there that we basically have, which is Bez has done enough good things over the balance of his career that you should have faith. But you two both sounded like you had a few little doubts about that.
I mean, yes. I think doubts is harsh, because I don't want to come across as somebody who doesn't think this is a good signing. Again, I think this is the correct decision, basically. I've seen what Marco Bezzecchi could do in India. I've seen Marco Bezzecchi tear it up in Argentina. He's got a particular set of skills that really, really translates in certain environments, and that always, when you have a rider who succeeds in those environments, the low grip, the new track, the wet track, that tells you the talent is there and it's enormous. Now, that, to be fair, that doesn't always equate to definitive MotoGP success, because all of those things describe Jack Miller. For instance, Jack Miller is great in low grip, Jack Miller is great in wet track.
True.
He's been a successful MotoGP rider, but he has not been a world beater in MotoGP, save for some very rare weekends. We cannot ignore the fact that MotoGP has changed the rear tire construction this season. So not only has Marco Bezzecchi switched from one bike to another, but there has been a change to the Michelin rubber that Michelin said wasn't that meaningful, but that the lap times suggest has offered a very substantial extra kick of grip. Bezzecchi is struggling to get through corners fully. He's getting understeer. You do suspect he's the kind of rider for whom extra grip might not really be what he required, because it's not just for him, it's for everybody, and he'd just prefer the tires to probably be no good. That would be where his talent would really, really shine through. And I cannot escape the fact, and neither will Aprilia, neither will Marco Bezzecchi himself, there is an argument to be made that he's been the worst Ducati rider this season, save for Franco Morbidelli, who has been
injured. Got special circumstances.
Yeah, because he's running further back on average than Alex Marquez and Fabio Di Giannantonio. I mean, Di Giannantonio has so far had the upper hand over at VR46. Yeah. I think Alex Marquez is the only debate there, and maybe Marco Bezzecchi has been.
I was going to say, you mentioning Alex Marquez did remind me that Alex Marquez exists, which I haven't really noticed on track this year. So I think Bez, I've noticed Bez.
Yeah, I mean,
his bike's very yellow though, and he's got big hair, so it's easier to. But
no,
anyway.
he ran up front a couple.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been in the podium.
He's had
he
highs,
ran up front
hasn't he?
more than Alex or more than Fabio Di Giannantonio, but his nadirs were definitely worse than Di Giannantonio's. Like the valleys have been substantial and they've been rough.
And that's from a massive point of expectation as well.
But all the while, Marc Marquez has been, again, this goes back to Marc Marquez as usual, but people who don't think he's been good on the GP23 or not so good on the GP23, again, just look at the other guys, please. It really does seem pretty simple in that regard. And I don't think we can totally exclude Marco Bezzecchi's struggles so far as a total aberration. I don't really believe it. Because he's also, before MotoGP, he's been a good rider, but he's not been a rider that you'd say would definitely be a smash success in MotoGP. He's had good seasons, but he's also had, remember first Moto2 season on the KTM that wasn't very good? But that was still working better for other riders, like Jorge Martin, like Brad Binder, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, God, I hope I have that right in my head. Otherwise, this all needs to be cut. But yeah, Bezzecchi's he's obviously supremely talented. He is, again, a very, very good signing, but I don't see it as a slam dunk. But, this has been the skeptical corner. I suspect the rest of the episode is going to be arguing why Bezzecchi was better than the other options.
I mean, the thing is, look, the reality is, right, not every rider is signed by every team to win a world championship. He is, I think, an upgrade on both of the riders that they currently have in terms of talent and potential. Val is shaking his head as if I'm completely wrong, but I mean, they've signed a rider who is very fast but is slightly inconsistent to replace Maverick Vinales, the king of fast but inconsistent. But this one's like 5 years younger and Italian. So I don't think that they've made an upgrade in their rider lineup in terms of the number of days that they can be at their potential, because the potential is the same. It's race wins. Jorge Martin is the guy they've signed to try and fight for a title. Bezzecchi is there to support him. Reality, there will be a number one and a number two in this team because that's their levels at the minute. And I don't think that's a bad deal at all. I as much as Val might shake his head, I think they've upgraded both riders, both sides of the garage right now. I'm curious to see which one he thinks that they haven't upgraded on.
Yeah, Vinales is better than Bezzecchi right now. I don't think that's...
Yeah, right now, but over the course of his career, he has been captain in consistency.
Too, yes. I would say Vinales is better than Bezzecchi in terms of MotoGP accolades and on a rate basis.
So... All right, I've got a question for you both on this because this is something I don't fully understand myself. I just throw in like jibes about Vinales vanishing in races without actually interrogating my opinion that much, I'm afraid. I had exactly the same thought of, so they've swapped Vinales for Bezzecchi. What's I worry about Bezzecchi? He's sometimes quick, he's sometimes not. So, okay, fine, straight swap in a way. When Bezzecchi impresses... It's the sort of stuff that's wild Casey Stoner. It's the low grip, it's the wet, it's the you can see the raw talent is what's shining through here that might be limited at other times by the circumstances around him or something he can't get his head around. But the ability to ride a bike really fast is so clear. when Viñales looks like a world-beating monster of amazingness, I don't know what the factor is. I don't see a pattern of, this is a track or this is a circumstance, other than is it winter testing, where Viñales is going to wipe the floor with everyone. And that's the bit where I think that there is an upgrade here, because you have a better chance of knowing what you're getting with Bezzecchi. I
think the thing that turns Maverick Viñales from the guy that fluffs the start and finishes P8 into the guy that tops every session and wins both races in a weekend is Maverick Viñales' head. I think that he's a confidence rider. I've seen lots of them over the guys that I've worked with over the years, where sometimes they turn up and they think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread that weekend and they're untouchable. Because there is no other factor that links Maverick Viñales' successes other than just the mood that he turns up in. Bezzecchi, I think, to an extent, has a bit of a similar trait. And actually, Rivola hinted to that whenever he spoke to the media. He kind of said that, what he's seen from the outside, it looks like Bezzecchi's maybe someone that needs an arm put around his shoulder on the right weekend to get the most out of him. I mean, that is absolutely something that Rivola has tons of experience with Viñales at the minute. So, from that point, if that's what they see he's missing, and that is what they've looked at Maverick and seen that they've been able to bring to the party on occasion, I think that should help convince them that there's loads of potential there as well.
I'm not saying that Bezzecchi's not going to have a better career than Maverick in the long run. I think that's entirely possible. And in fact, Marco Bezzecchi's upsides are the upsides of a world champion. I mean, so are Maverick Viñales's, but that's, for Viñales, the train has left the station many times already. Whereas for Bezzecchi, he's got his whole career ahead of him still. Even though, age-wise, there's probably not such a big difference between them, but I don't quite remember what it is right now. It's just, I don't remember Viñales having a season as bad as this one for Bezzecchi. I remember him having weekends bad enough, certainly, which were like brain destruction weekends mostly. But as a full season, I don't know. And also, I think it is too easy to get lost in the stereotype of Maverick Viñales, right? We talk about him, showing up to the weekend and not getting the job done, getting a bad start, finishing 8th. Sometimes that is legitimately just Maverick Viñales nonsense. That clearly there's been a lot of that this season. But, the last round we saw Mugello. I mean, you basically described Mugello. I still argue he was awesome at Mugello, and that's what the Aprilia had. I think if we're going to blame Maverick Viñales right now for bad starts, we also have to blame Aleix Espargaro, who, was at Barcelona, pole twice, and then he's P5 into turn 1. I don't think he's doing anything wrong, and I don't think Maverick is doing anything wrong in those scenarios. I think just the KTMs gobble him up and the Ducati's slightly better. And pace-wise, Viñales' big problem isn't that he's losing his head. It's that he's actually arguably too timid, you would say, or there's something in the bike that doesn't let him make up for those start losses, which, as a side note, is why I'm more excited about this KTM move than I originally thought, because Maverick Viñales on a bike that starts well, I think is going to answer a lot of questions for us.
I think that's a really interesting point as well. I was thinking Maverick Viñales not on a bike that's slightly underpowered is going to be a really interesting one to maybe make me realise I've been talking nonsense for a couple of years about him when he's actually got a better chance of making the overtaking move stick. But the other element about this change is it is a complete new broom, fresh lineup, which is not what Aprilia really intended. It was forced on them. I mean, you assume that Aprilia wanted to change at least one rider going into next season. It was going to have the opportunity with movements elsewhere. And then Espargaro retiring created one gap that was kind of out of Aprilia's hands, but solved its dilemma of who to keep, who to drop in a way. And then Viñales walks slightly unexpectedly.
So Rivola, I think, kind of hinted at what he believes to be the reason why as well. We haven't spoken to Viñales yet, so they didn't kindly do what Aprilia did and put everyone in front of us to speak to them. We'll get a chance to speak to him on Thursday at Assen and hear some of his motives. But Rivola kind of hinted that it's all about now becoming the first guy to ever win in 4 manufacturers. And that's the target. That's the reason why that KTM switch is coming. Which, on one hand, kind of implies that he believes, for some reason or another, that the Aprilia has reached the ceiling. He's not going to win a title on it because that's the reason why you step away from a factory bike onto a satellite bike, because I know that it's the most factory satellite team in MotoGP, but it is still a satellite team. So he is stepping down in one sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a decision he'll have made lightly. I think that's something that, despite Aprilia believing that they were going to keep him and trying really, hard to kind of say he's going to become the new captain and we're going to have this great team with him and Jorge next year. I think that's obviously already been in his head even before all this happened. So it might have blindsided Aprilia a little bit. But similarly, they didn't sign Bezzecchi so fast because they thought that, that Maverick, because they were sure that Maverick was staying and had no plan B. So there must have been a rumour of it, a whisper of it within the garage. Credit to Massimo Rivola. They've lost both riders and signed replacements for both of them within like 10 days of both leaving. They've turned around a very, very fast rider market this year. Yeah. That's very impressive because, both of those guys you could potentially have seen waiting to see what happened elsewhere before moving. So maybe not Martin once the KTM thing was full, but they moved very quickly and it's a good job.
Yeah, I agree. I'm super impressed with how Aprilia played this, and even 6 months ago this would have been a contender for the best lineup in MotoGP, I think. Well, not against Mark and Pecco, but up there certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Bezzecchi's obviously had a tough season, so that sort of knocks it down a little bit, but it's still, the promise of this lineup is incredible. And regarding Viñales, I do think that is part of the logic. I still also think that part of it is just him, him walking around with a key and trying various doors because he believes that sooner or later there's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in his perfect bike that will allow him to be just Maverick Viñales, the best version of Maverick Viñales at every weekend. I'm probably a little too old to believe in that sort of fairy tale at this point, but
I think you are a year older than Viñales, so maybe.
Am I? Oh boy, that's. Oh man, I'm talking about him like his career is already over, basically on the downslope. That's tough to take. Don't say
people
those
can
things.
talk and type for longer than they can ride Grand Prix motorcycles, Val. It's fine. On this note of Aprilia has signed a lineup that is a contender for the best on the grid, I just want to take a moment to appreciate everything Aprilia and Rivola have achieved to make this possible, because while you were talking, I went back into our website archive and found a feature from the start of 2021 called All the Riders Who Turned Aprilia's MotoGP Bike Down. This is only 3 years ago, when Aprilia was being rejected by Cal Crutchlow, Jorge Lorenzo, Fabio Di Giannantonio, Marco Bezzecchi back then as well, Chaz Davis. This is when Aprilia is desperately trying to fill the gap to Joe Roberts. Remember him turning Aprilia down at that point? And then the one who did want to stay but wasn't allowed to was Bradley Smith. This is Aprilia post Andrea Iannone ban, scrabbling for a solution and finding that no one wanted to be on that bike. And okay, Fabio Quartararo turned Aprilia down this year. Everyone else has gone, oh yeah, if my route to a factory Ducati is blocked, I'm going to Aprilia. Even though they probably won't pay me as much as somewhere else, although from the phone calls Rivola made to his boss, it sounds like they might have found a bit more cash for wages. I think that's phenomenal. And whether these guys get on that bike and it turns out the Aprilia is not as good as we all hoped or thought it was or not, well done, Aprilia and Rivola, for getting to this point that you have signed these riders from your team having been a joke. I don't think it's unfair to say that a few years ago. Great effort.
Apart from the retired guys on that list, everybody signs that Aprilia deal right now. And even the retired guys, were they still racing, they'd signed that deal, I think. So that's...
Lorenzo would do it if he was having a really cocky day and was like, I'm done with boxing, I want to get back and just try and beat everyone.
If he was picking between the Aprilia and that Honda that effectively ended his career, I think this Aprilia would honestly get the nod just in terms of fit more than anything.
Yeah, and let's not forget that even before that happened, even before, all the kind of all the guys that rejected them, they went through riders in the years before that like it was going out of fashion. I think they had a new rider every year alongside Aleix until Maverick. Maverick's the first guy that's ever done more than a season as his teammate in his 8 years there. It's wild. And that's all since Rivola arrived. That it really is. I think him arriving was the sign that they were getting serious about how they were going to operate the team. It was the right move for Romano Albiciano because it meant that he could stop worrying about running a team and actually build a motorbike. And the combination has just been awesome. There's not many teams have turned around a bike in that situation as quickly. So fair play to them.
Yeah, it is also about unleashing Albiciano. Clearly has been, because as a tech leader, I think he's very respected in MotoGP now for what he's turned that bike into, and you'd rather have that guy focus on that than try to sort out what to do with the contract of the day, etc. Especially as considering his reign has been quite fractious in that regard.
You know we love talking stats here at The Athletic. Here's one that's super simple to remember. Discover automatically doubles the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cash Back Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. That's right. You could put it towards some memorabilia you've had your eye on, or treat yourself to a premium sports network. You earn and Discover doubles. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
We'll get back to the pod in a moment, but first of all, let me tell you about Grammarly. Email, Google Docs, Slack, you write across multiple platforms and places during your workday, so delivering consistent, high-quality communication everywhere is key. Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps you get work done faster with high-quality writing for better projects, proposals, presentations, and more. Best of all, Grammarly works where you work, so you can get more done no matter what tools you use. As a journalist and podcast host, I'm constantly writing and rewriting copy and drawing up scripts. It's part of the job, and Grammarly helps make it faster. It's got some really cool features like tone suggestions to help you strike the right balance between direct and friendly in work emails. Plus, Grammarly has a ton of other great features like advanced spelling, grammar, punctuation, and conciseness suggestions to ensure your writing is professional, mistake-free, and clear. Get AI writing support that works where you work. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast. Easier said, done.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Quickly diverting from Aprilia and the rider market to say a massive thank you, not just to everyone who's joined the Race Members Club since we launched the MotoGP section on there and became present on Patreon as well with our special riders tier where you can just get the MotoGP stuff. It's not just that a lot of you have signed up for that, which we really appreciate. The comments you've been sending in while signing up have just been so appreciated. It's clear that you really want us to be doing a bit more MotoGP and that you appreciate what we're doing so far, and that genuinely means a huge amount because we love doing this podcast. We love writing the Larry stuff. I get these two writing on the website. Covering MotoGP for the race is a huge amount of fun. And to know that we're having fun and you're appreciating the fun we're having is even better. So thank you for that. If you want to get involved in the Race Members Club and our new MotoGP section on there, you can sign up via the website or sign up via Patreon. You can get the riders only tier on Patreon for £3 plus VAT per month if you just want the MotoGP stuff. And that MotoGP stuff is guaranteed 2 extra podcasts per month. The first of those is up there already. It's us 3 debating the TT. And we'll be slotting in another bonus one around the time of Assen this weekend. We have a potentially very exciting interviewee we might get for that one. If we don't get that person for this one, we will get them soon. So you will get that in the Members Club. There'll also be the chance to ask us questions for the podcast after every post-race episode. Keep an eye on your inbox and your Patreon notifications for your summons to do that after the Dutch TT this weekend. Back to Aprilia rider market business. The other part of the conversation with Massimo Rivola wasn't about the factory team, but about Trackhouse, because if you're having a clear out or having a clear out forced on you of your factory riders, you want some continuity from somewhere, don't you? Trackhouse Aprilia currently has Raul Fernandez and Miguel Oliveira. Val, you asked Rivola for his take on Raul Fernandez, a guy who came into MotoGP surrounded by such excitement, and personally I haven't spotted a ton of justification for that excitement apart from the odd results since he's been on a MotoGP bike. This is what Rivola had to say in reply to your Raul Fernandez question.
I'm a super fan of Raul. I offered the contract to Raul after the first race of his Moto2 career. So if his season was a bit up and down in especially first year in KTM, also the first year last year with us, I think he showed the speed, and I can tell you that we have data that can show the speed of Raul more than you guys can see from the races or lap times normally. But from the data we can see that he is ready to catch a podium potentially. Obviously, you need a lot of factors: good start, starting from a good position, but the speed is there. So I'm a real fan of Raul, and I hope he continue with us.
So straight in there with saying he's a super fan, would have offered Fernandez a contract straight after his first Moto2 race. Very, very enthusiastic. He was also asked about Fernandez's current teammate at Trackhouse, Miguel Oliveira. Here's his take on Oliveira's performance.
So first of all, if he will continue or not, it will be in his hand and in Trackhouse hand, and not in mine. So mainly Davide and obviously Justin Marks. Personally, I wanted to have Miguel in Aprilia, and still I think that Miguel in Aprilia can deliver a very good performance. Last year it was the most unlucky year of a rider because he was heavily crashed by first Mark and then Fabio, and so it was a very difficult season for him. This year, obviously, the expectation was higher considering the performance of the bike with Maverick and Alation times, but it's also true that the team is let's say started as the same team of last year, and since Davide joined the team, he started introducing new ideas, asking for new engineers. So it's a working process. It's not something that you can do from day to night and vice versa, but it's something that you need time to build a stronger team. So I hope really that they can find a way to continue. Also because having change on the factory team, 2 riders, it would be good to have the same rider in a satellite team. But I'm sure that Davide, with the experience he has, for sure will find what is the best for his team.
So it's not to say that Rivola's being negative about Oliveira there, but the tone difference between his take on the Trackhouse riders is pretty striking, isn't it?
I mean, do also note that, the question I asked about Fernandez wasn't necessarily, do you like Raul Fernandez? It was, do you think your evaluation is being hurt right now by the fact that Raul Fernandez is the only Aprilia rider on a misfit last year bike, and that you're still having to wait for what is now expected to be a Silverstone upgrade to see how Raul Fernandez really stacks up against the current Aprilias and against Miguel Oliveira. And obviously there'll still be an adaptation process too, because Raul was supposed to try that bike more in depth in the Mugello test, and that got completely rained out. Now, there was no real prompt to go, Raul Fernandez is amazing. Yeah. Tell us how amazing he is. So the fact that that answer was offered up anyway suggests to me that, clearly the faith, Fernandez within Aprilia, or at least, within Massimo Rivola, is pretty unshaken. And for me, that makes him a strong favourite to remain at Trackhouse.
I mean, the reality is that the 2 questions asked were, what's your assessment of Fernandez, which was his opportunity to give a glowing endorsement of Fernandez, and then he was kind of more specifically asked, isn't Miguel Oliveira great? And he said, well, we might keep both riders. There was a very, very notable difference in the tone there, and it almost made me think, actually, I went back and listened to it again before the podcast, and it actually made me think that potentially Oliveira's already out, that they know that he's already on his way out, because he was so dismissive of him. He describes himself as a Rivola super fan, as a Fernandez super fan. I don't even think he said Oliveira's name. I think I'm still not sure who the second Trackhouse rider is going to be, but I'm pretty certain now that the first one is going to be Raul Fernandez.
We can justify that decision on the basis of this year, because Fernandez is on a bike that I think on the balance of the season we think is worse than the 2024. And he and Oliveira have basically gone blow for blow. I don't think it would be fair to say that Raul Fernandez has been better just without accounting for machinery. But I think
their lows have been on the same level. But I think Fernandez's occasional peak has been higher.
Yes, true. But it hasn't translated into like a points buffer that you would.
No. It hasn't necessarily translated into results. But you know what I mean. He's occasionally crashing out of third or crashing out of the lead instead of crashing out of 10th.
Miguel Oliveira has not.
And on the rest of the weekends, they're both 12th.
Again, in Oliveira's defense, and I will continue to say this because I think it's fair enough, and even Rivola himself has brought it up, and rightly so. Oliveira should have been really good last year, and then just got injured repeatedly and had his season completely written off. And now, whatever learnings were lost that year, whatever momentum, even if we don't really believe in momentum, I guess, but whatever was lost that season, with the switch to these finicky 24s, and they are clearly finicky in some ways, because coming out of the preseason, we expected Aleix to demolish the other 24s, basically, because he was the one gelling with him, and Maverick Vinales wasn't, neither was Miguel Oliveira. But then Vinales clicked, and now I think on the balance of the season, Maverick Vinales has been the best Aprilia rider. But it changes a lot with the bike. Like, the bike is, it's particular. And Miguel Oliveira just hasn't found the key yet. There is enough in his MotoGP career to suggest he will. And I think, for me, if some of the rumors are correct as to the state of the rider market, for me, he's still probably the best choice to keep. I would keep Miguel Oliveira over bringing in Joe Roberts, for instance. That's just me. But if there's certain options, then I think I would make Miguel Oliveira the exposed part rather than Raul Fernandez. I would just keep Raul Fernandez at this point. And it's another upside play, but yeah.
The guy that I see in the rider market right now who is potentially better placed to be a Trackhouse rider, and I don't just mean that in terms of current results level, but I think as a package, it's maybe Fabio Di Giannantonio, who I could see being a really, DJ gets, I think, what Trackhouse are trying to do, bigger picture, in terms of storytelling and presence in media, and I think that would be a really good gel. I think that, you could see Trackhouse using, you could see a lot of really cool video content from Fabio Di Giannantonio heading to NASCAR races and loving it and really getting into it. And I don't think that, I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor, but I think it's something that should certainly interest Trackhouse. I don't think for a second that Miguel Oliveira doesn't deserve a place in the grid next year either. I just don't necessarily see the Trackhouse is the right fit for him. I still maintain that if Pramac go Yamaha, he would be an excellent team leader at a developmental Pramac Yamaha squad, for example.
Yeah.
That's a nice shout.
Yeah, I quite like that a lot.
Yeah.
That would be good for Miguel. That would be good for MotoGP, I think, honestly.
Yeah, again, Oliveira is someone we end up quite negative about sometimes, but I do think his peaks have generally been great in MotoGP, and he was really unlucky last year, and he is someone that you don't feel like the full question has been answered of actually what is he capable of in MotoGP yet. With Martin and Bezzecchi signed for the main team, it kind of makes the whole Trackhouse situation a lot lower pressure in a way, because you've got two riders who you could be really pretty confident in. in your factory squad. So Trackhouse is kind of we can take a punt. We can wait a bit longer to see if Fernandez lives up to this the billing that Rivola and others have of him. Maybe we do stick with Oliveira for continuity to see if it comes good, because the alternatives aren't. There are fewer alternatives who are like obviously better now.
Yeah, I mean it's again it is. I think it is high stakes because Aprilia does owe it to an important partner to put its full weight behind it in sorting out a maximally attractive rider lineup, and at a certain degree, there's also this sort of rejuvenation that comes from signing like a top drawer rookie, right? A top drawer rookie can change everything. Pedro Acosta walked into the KTM garage. It took him 2-3 tests to change everything. Everything is different now. KTM is no longer what it was. Tech 3, after years in the semi-wilderness, has been transformed by this golden boy who has come from nowhere. I think for Trackhouse, this could seem quite attractive. I don't know that there's an option in Moto2 that would do that. Look, I would like to see Sergio Garcia somewhere in the Premier class. And for me, the problem is, and this is going back to the rookie tests thing, we don't know which of these guys might be actually a really special fit for one of the bikes. And I suspect that there is a part of that puzzle that we're not seeing. I think there's probably a guy in Moto2 who you put on one of the bikes in MotoGP, and suddenly you're there with your jaw on the floor and you're like, oh, this is incredible. This guy is... But we're not going to find that out. And in the absence of that certainty, and in the fact that, Trackhouse firstly needs to establish respectability, midfield constantness. Raul and Miguel seems all right to me, genuinely.
Firstly, I don't think that guy exists in Moto2 right now. I don't think there's a game-changing talent in Moto2 at the minute. You can't have one every year, and I don't think there's... The next one I see potentially in the pipeline is maybe David Alonso, but I've seen too many Moto3 superstars get absolutely burned by Moto2, looking at you, Izan Guevara, to put money on that right now. So I don't think that there's necessarily... There's certainly no Pedro Acosta or Marc Marquez anywhere in the pipeline at the minute that we can see. Just while you were speaking, Val, I had a quick look at my kind of like who's going where list that I've been keeping updated and working on. There is one name that potentially could be a Trackhouse target for next year who I think is actually super talented and who would fit really well into that building a bit of consistency with solid results in year one. We have because of all the injury woes, we have completely overlooked Franco Morbidelli going into this silly season because it's kind of been just assumed that he'll go to VR46 Ducati to replace Bezzecchi. But, if what we saw last time out is actually the Franco Morbidelli level, and suddenly he's capable of delivering, Zarco-esque performances on the Pramac Yamaha or the Pramac Ducati for the second half of the season, and then they do switch to Yamaha for next year, which we'll come to, because I'm talking about it as it's a done thing almost, so we'll come to that in a minute. But he's going to be a free agent because he is not going to go back to ride a Yamaha next season. That, for me, is another one that would be a real valuable contender there.
I mean, also in terms of hypotheticals, I think if we're going to sort of outside hires, I think above Oliveira, above Morbidelli, above anyone else, for me, if I'm running Trackhouse, if I'm Davide Brivio, and this is a phone call Davide Brivio makes, I think, the very first item of business I do is I get on the phone, I check with Alex Rins, is everything okay with Yamaha? Are you having any second thoughts? Are they having any second thoughts? If they are, why don't you come on over, Valerie? I mean, it's for me, that would be perfect for Trackhouse.
The only thing with Rins, with Mir, with guys like that, the only thing is they will only go to Trackhouse if there's no space for them in the factory team that they're in already.
Yes. Because
it's going to be at least a 50% pay cut, probably substantially more, probably more like 80% pay cut. So that will only happen if they lose the opportunity to be elsewhere. And I think that Rins is probably quite safe and that there's no one else that you'd really think will do a better job at Yamaha.
Yeah, he should be. He should be. There's no real argument for Yamaha to cut him, I think. But weirder things have happened.
I do want to talk about Joan Mir in a minute because he's been in the news a little bit during this gap as well. Something that occurred to me a couple of times during this conversation, as you guys suggested Digia or Morbidelli for the satellite Aprilia team. Does this rider market shuffle that we've had now, it's not just Pramac probably going to Yamaha, but where riders have gone, does this mean the end of Ducati as this monster team? Has moving Marc Marquez into the factory lineup just completely changed the game in terms of Ducati being the manufacturer with all the strength in depth? Because Bezzecchi's gone, Martin's gone. You're talking as if Morbidelli or Di Giannantonio would step away from the Ducati fold to be on satellite Aprilias, and that would be fine for them. Is this the end of an era? And if it is that because Marquez and Bagnaia just knock out the factory feature for everyone? Is that because this gap between the GP24 and the GP23 this year kind of ends the era of you can win on basically any Ducati? Or have I just put a needless overarching narrative on something that's just a few rider market coincidences?
No, you're right. I mean, their reserves have been massively depleted. I mean, earlier this season, we were talking about, boy, wouldn't it be great if Ducati figured out a way to keep Martin, Marquez, and Enea Bastianini. And if they lose one of the three, well, at least they'll still have Marco Bezzecchi, who proved himself last year. They have now lost Martin, they have lost Bastianini, they have lost Marco Bezzecchi. And they lost Johan Zarco the year before because they were trying to make room for Bezzecchi. I mean, the rider lineup is unquestionably depleted. It doesn't matter so much when the works duo is as good as it is, and it is incredible. So, they won't be hurting. But again, part of that reason is probably, we're all expecting Pramac to go to Yamaha. A big part of why is because the Ducati cannot offer them the rider that would keep Pramac at the same level where it has been. And a lot of Ducati's dominance has been put down to the data sharing and the caliber of riders they have, and having the 8 bikes that, each can try something on a Friday and then they can converge into the machine that they are. It's not like Ducati has not collapsed, but it is like I don't see how we come out of this not saying that it's been weakened. Like, for instance, my overarching Ducati thought right now is the guy who deserves a works bike most of all that doesn't have it right now is Fabio Di Giannantonio. Last year, Di Giannantonio was completely expendable by Ducati. They could have sent him to Moto2 without noticing. They could have sent out, they could have went to a weekend, seen him not arrive, and it would have made no difference to them up until a certain point into the season. Di Giannantonio has made great strides, but I think also the fact that he, for me, is now a lot more important to the Ducati setup than he ever was. For me, that's a reflection also of what has happened in terms of the rider roster that they have.
We touched on Joan Mir briefly in that last section. He's someone we've been advocating to get the hell out of Honda for a long time now. A few reports around during this gap about what he is or isn't going to do. Who wants to fill listeners in on what's going on with Mir?
Yeah, just, Spanish media and, journalists who, are reputable, trustworthy, who you would back on this sort of reporting, saying that there's a done deal with Honda. There's an extra 2 years to tack on to Mir's extremely fun time in Repsol Honda colors, even if it's still going to be Repsol or not is an entirely different question. It really strongly flies against the vibe of his addresses to the media. Because, when he's been speaking, it sounded like, I will do anything but this. But there was also, the actual words he was saying was, I will wait for all the options to fall before me and then I will take stock. So the possibility is that just the options weren't there, really. And that what Honda can offer financially and what Honda can maybe promise and sweet talk him into just making him a bit more of a centerpiece and making him feel the progress a bit more, maybe outweighed like the Trackhouse Aprilia dream and the financial difference that would have been there. But still, I'm not sure how good this is going to be for his happiness levels, honestly, if he has resigned with Honda.
Yeah, it's not going to be good for his mental health maybe going forwards, because he has been absolutely miserable. The only reason I can think that he's done it, based on how incredibly miserable he has been when he's been speaking to us recently, is that they've basically given him finally the Quartararo treatment and promised big things are coming, big changes are going to happen. We are going to try and deliver you a proper, refurbished team that delivers. Because there's not really much else reason to stay based on form and mood.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, it's even, the progress of the bike is one thing. But for me, it's a big thing. Just if there was any sort of concerted pitch of, like, we want you. You're our guy. You're our future. There's nothing else for us. We don't want any of these other guys. And even if there were other guys on the market, we want you, despite everything, despite the 50 crashes a season, please stay. If you do that sales pitch well, I think many a rider would go for it. And maybe that's what's happened here. And it would be good for Honda because I think they do need a bit of that approach. They do need to make riders who are not Marc Marquez feel like they're super wanted. And they did it with Johan Zarco last year quite effectively. And if they've pulled it off with Mir this year, despite the objective awfulness of the bike, then, well done.
It's just, on paper, it just looks like a cycle of relentless, pointless misery and rubbish, though, doesn't it? Mir's results, top qualifying this year for him is a 17th. I don't know what his crash tally is in actual numbers for this season. I just know the impression you get every time you see a crash graphic fly up or hear the gravel in the commentator's headset, it's probably going to be Mir. Is, like you say, his addresses to the media have just been like, get me out of here, this is terrible. This guy's a MotoGP world champion. This guy was a race, hasn't actually won a lot of races, but was very impressive elsewhere, was a very hot property coming into MotoGP. And it's not just Honda. I know the circumstances are difficult, but I don't see that Mir has actually given anything in his performances to make Honda want to make him its guy and to put its full faith behind him. If Honda's doing that, it's doing that on the promise of what it believes Mir is overall over the balance of his career, because he's not ridden this bike very fast and he's crashed it a lot.
Yeah, you're completely right. There's no escaping that. Last season, he was definitively and clearly the third best Honda rider behind Marc Marquez and an Alex Rins who spent half the season broken. And even so, what Alex Rins did in his fit time was clearly better. Just clearly better. I don't think there was any question there. This season, Mir is the best Honda rider in races, but like on the overall, the full package, I think Johan Zarco has a strong claim as to at least being level with him and maybe better, and is crashing a little bit less. Yeah, you're right. It's maybe the best outcome for MotoGP, like the most interesting outcome for MotoGP would be swapping Miguel Oliveira and Joan Mir just straight up, seeing how Oliveira can anchor Honda and, hunker down with it, try to build something for himself, and seeing Joan Mir try to rejuvenate his career in a Trackhouse. But at the same time, if Honda wants Mir, I do think it's good for MotoGP if Honda has the anchor rider that it wants, and there is the potential in Joan Mir. Well, we shouldn't say potential. The guy's, as you said, a world champion in multiple classes. Yeah, maybe it's just good that Honda keeps pushing on with him. I just hope it's less miserable. Just a little bit less. Nobody owes Honda anything. Nobody owes Joan Mir anything. He signed this deal and apparently he's signing it again for some reason. And Honda's, been bad enough for long enough to where there is no divine right there to run first. But, it's okay to see them both give it a proper go rather than whatever this has been.
He's got to just be thinking the time will come. The time will come. Maybe the 27 bike is the time that it will come whenever things are different again. Yeah. The reality is there's no other championship winning bikes available right now. So why not take the opportunity to steer the development of what should be the bike that fixes all of Honda's problems? Why not be their lead guy for 27 on a bike that you've built for yourself and, be in a position then to try and win again?
There's no arrogance in Joan Mir. He's well aware that his stock has been tanked, that his stock is in the gutter. Very well aware of that. So
he was quite open about that in Mugello. Kind of said that no one leaves Honda in a better position than they joined it, and he's completely on the money there.
It's so sad, isn't it? Is there any scope for Honda to shift Johan Zarco up to Repsol for next season?
I don't think they want to. It feels like
I think
it would be scope.
He's doing a good job.
He's done a good job at LCR already.
Yeah.
It doesn't it would when we talk Pedro Costa, I don't like the idea of a mid-season Pedro Costa swap to KTM, but I at least see the title gold that this will accelerate. Like, I see the idea. With Zarco, okay, he finishes 16th on a Repsol instead of 17th on an LCR. Congratulations. Big whoop. No reason to unsettle the structure. No reason to, Lucio Cicinello is already staying as your partner with a bike that's crud. Don't upset him by taking his best rider.
Absolutely.
Okay.
With both Yamaha, KTM, and probably Ducati, if they lose Pramac all sniffing around for more satellite teams, the last thing you want to do is screw over your satellite team who's been loyal to you.
Yeah, fair point. I think my starting point there is just seeing Zarco as being the Honda rider who's popped up on the timing screens in an interesting position more often than any other this season, thinking if he's doing a good job, get him on the bike that matters most. But like you say, if he's doing a good enough job for Honda overall at LCR and LCR is happy, then it's probably a longer term win to keep everyone where they are.
It's also worth noting that there are again rumours that Repsol are going to leave Honda, in which case the title sponsor, I would imagine, of Honda will be Honda, and in that case there's less desire to have the Repsol bike be the bike that matters in the grand scheme of making the project better. There's less reason to have it be the bike that's delivering results every weekend.
So another person who's been in the thick of the MotoGP rider market in this gap is somewhat out of the blue. Toprak Razgatlioglu, the world superbike superstar again, with his amazing achievement since moving to BMW. A declaration recently from his manager, Kenan Sofuoglu, basically saying that Toprak is going to get himself in MotoGP for 2025. Now, the stumbling blocks to this straight away are, is BMW going to let this guy that's like tearing up superbikes for it go? And where would Toprak fit in MotoGP, given how the rider market is falling into place? Has that Yamaha MotoGP test that seemed like it had ended Toprak's MotoGP dream, has like talk of that spread through the paddock enough that other people wouldn't take her? Basically, it's one thing announcing, yeah, it's going to go to MotoGP for 2025. Another thing is like, what are all the pieces that make this happen? Will it work? Val, you can start with this one because you basically attacked all those points in a column last week. The Toprak puzzle, go for it.
Yeah, it's a complicated, it's a weird, complicated situation, and one that it's really hard to talk about without coming off the wrong way, because I can totally see why Yamaha's verdict on Toprak's MotoGP readiness last year after the test could be, potentially ending things, because I think no MotoGP team is really in a position here to take a proper project, to take a flyer. Not right now. Maybe some rider market maneuverings will create that, but right now, MotoGP is so close. You can't run You can't run 8/10 of your potential off your potential. You can't run 5/10 off your potential. You just got to be there. You got to be there, or your career is immediately over and your team's struggling and suffering. Toprak, if I was BMW, I would not let him go. But it depends what exactly the contract says, but I would obviously not let him go. If I was a MotoGP team, I don't know that I would do this. And I say all of that, but it is an important disclaimer. I've watched most of World Superbikes this season. He has been electric. He has been incredible. If he wins this title, it is one of the greatest titles we've seen on the World Championship scene. He has made other BMW riders look like non-entities. He has transformed a program that was not really in the running into a juggernaut. I know there have been, a weight rule change that has pegged back Alvaro Bautista some, but you can't put that down entirely to it. Toprak has the juice. He has the goods. He's won races in phenomenal last corner nonsense overtake fashion. He also won races just by walking away immediately from the opposition. He has been money. And I think there will be enough people in the MotoGP paddock who are like, I don't care about the fit. I don't care whether the Pirelli tires are a better fit for him than the Michelin's, or, production bike versus prototype bike, or the learning. I don't care about any of it. This guy is a talent supernova. I want to give it a go. And if it fails, so be it. But if it succeeds, we might have the guy who also, let's not forget, marketing-wise, is gold.
Yeah, so for all the reasons you've just listed, Toprak is an awesome talent. I don't know if he'd come to MotoGP. and necessarily be the next Marc Marquez, because they're different championships and essentially different sports to an extent. So I don't know if that would translate instantly. Well, it certainly wouldn't translate instantly, because whenever you see Marc Marquez taking 6 months to adapt from a Honda to a very similar Ducati, it's going to take Top Rack at least a season to adapt from a production bike with a loose frame to, you know, a super rigid MotoGP bike and very different tires. It wouldn't be an instant process, but that's fine. That's part of what you get whenever you sign someone from Superbikes. Secondly, I don't think there's anyone who'd want to see him move over more than Dorna. He comes from a country with a massive, rabid motorcycling fan base. He is an absolute showman. He is something that MotoGP has been missing in terms of showmanship. And I think it's a bit of a shame that he's been practicing his art in Superbikes, where maybe there aren't, you know, as many eyes on him to make him the superstar that he deserves to be, because he's just awesome whenever you see him. We were in Misano weekend before last for Superbikes, and they do their podium in the middle of the paddock with like a red carpet into it, and Top Rack's doing stoppies up this red carpet lined with fans on each side of it. It's just awesome. It works so well. The problem with the whole thing, and honestly, the one thing that I think more than anything else that's going to keep him away from MotoGP is his management, because Kenan Sofuoglu has been honestly toxic for Top Rack's progression opportunities. I think he makes these bold statements. He spreads rumors suggesting that there's opportunities when there aren't. He leads on teams, then, you know, changes his mind. He's had this ego chip about they'll only go on a factory team, which strangely seems to have disappeared this time round, probably because there's no factory seats left. If he was managed by someone who was a bit more pragmatic, I think that he'd have been in MotoGP 2 or 3 years ago. He'd have been in MotoGP straight after he won his World Superbike title. And everything I see at the minute coming out of that camp, all these rumours about him potentially having a Pramac opportunity, all this, it's all Kenan bluster again, and I just don't trust anything that comes out of his mouth at the minute. So massive pinch of salt in terms of where all this is going to go, because kind of seen it before. We've also kind of seen it before with Jonathan Rea, where he was making bold proclamations about coming to MotoGP and the offers that he'd been given, in fact, including to an extent the same team, because he also kind of created rumors about him going to Repsol Honda, that whenever we questioned Repsol Honda about it, we're like, oh yeah, he talked and we listened. You know, there were, and there's an element of that now where Kenan is saying, oh yeah, we're talking to Repsol Honda, and then you're reading reports that they've signed Mir already. I don't see a very obvious path for Top Rack given previous statements, and whatever path there is being muddied even more by Kenan being involved.
I mean, for me, the question is, and this is not a question that Top Rack or Kenan Sofuoglu should concern themselves with, but it is one I can concern myself with. Would it be good for the overall motorcycling ecosystem for Top Rack Razgatlioglu to go to MotoGP and, you know, try to sort of learn the trade there? I mean, it would answer a lot of questions for us on his fit, on, well, I don't know that his talent level, but I think maybe his talent level, but certainly his fit to the Premier Class and the Michelins and all that, and how his particular strengths translate. But I like World Superbikes. It's been, you know, even without Top Rack, it would have been good this season, especially because, you know, Ducati has brought in Nicola Bulliga and have made that a real battle for supremacy within that team. But Top Rack's made it appointment viewing, hasn't he? And he could also do that next year, and he could do that in 26. And then for 27, if BMW comes over and he's won like maybe 2 of the 3 titles or whatever, even 1 of the 3, then he's earned sort of a shot there. And they do it together. But he's also already 30 at that point. Maybe that's too old. At the same time, for me in modern MotoGP, 27 and 30 are the same age. So I don't know. It's a complicated one. I don't know how to feel about it. It's interesting, and if a team does take a flyer, certainly I wouldn't begrudge the team. I wouldn't begrudge Toprak. I think Toprak's, again, I love what he's doing this campaign. I think he deserves it. But if I was a MotoGP team boss, I don't think I would do it.
But would you take Toprak's fellow World Superbike rider, Andrea Iannone? Because this is another bit of chat at the moment. Iannone, post-ban, back in top-level motorbike racing, back in any motorbike racing in World Superbikes, and looking pretty decent, I have to say, so far. Has been some chat about him reappearing in MotoGP as a result. Simon, what's going on with Iannone?
I mean, there is an element of the same thing here where there's lots of chat about him appearing back in MotoGP because he keeps talking about it. And no one else, and especially no one in MotoGP, really seems to be talking about it. I think it's been too long away. I think that, 4 years is 5 years away from a MotoGP bike is too long to find a way back, even if he is doing a great job in Superbikes at the minute. I mean, I don't think that it'll necessarily play into the ethics of any MotoGP team boss, but he is still an unrepentant cheat who has refused to admit that he did anything wrong and got banned for it, which is a red flag. If he'd come out and said, I screwed up and I want to be back and whatever, it would be much more of an easier sell for me. It would be much more of a repentance thing. So all in all, I just, like I say, it's talk, but it's talk that's coming from him, not from GP.
Yeah, I see where Simon's coming from, but as he said, I don't think that part enters into MotoGP team bosses thinking in any meaningful way. And I think there is still genuinely a lot of respect for the talent level of Andrea Iannone in the MotoGP paddock, including by some people who might be in a position to just unilaterally take a swing. I mean, again, Aprilia has always spoken about him in very glowing terms, even though their dalliance didn't really lead to anything before he got himself banned. And, Paolo Campinotti, who runs things at Pramac, is widely known as being a fan and admirer, and there's at least reporting that he's entertained the idea. I just wouldn't accomplish much, would it? I don't know. It's not in terms of that he would definitely be bad on a Premier Class bike. He might be fine, might be pretty good, but what's the end game? What's the long-term plan? He comes in, he's 36?
He's 34, so he's 34 now.
He's 30, yeah.
You said a minute ago, 27 and 30 are the same thing in MotoGP. I see that. 33 isn't, is it? 34 by the time
33 and 40 is the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I agree with Simon there. It is basically, it is the Valentino Rossi 40.
Yeah.
Look, it'd be interesting. And interesting is the name of the game, but again, if I was a MotoGP team boss, I'd say, look, great job keeping yourself fit enough to where you're back on a bike and you're good immediately. So clearly, again, the natural talent clearly coming through. But I don't see what the end goal would be for the two sides here. And it would have to be an extremely emotional decision, which, again, MotoGP teams clearly do sometimes. 100%. If I was a MotoGP team boss, I wouldn't. But, well, I say that. I don't know. Maybe all of my analysis is always clouded by emotion. Maybe I'm a huge fraud. That probably is true. But in this case, I wouldn't.
The two sides to the only thing for me are one. Well, there's three, because there's the drug ban and his attitude over it now. That's like you say, that's a red flag. Even taking that aside, you talk about an end game. I think if you're signing Iannone, you're doing it because your end game isn't obvious right now. You're doing it because you're going, oh, actually, we haven't got many options that I feel really excited about in this position that my team is in for whatever reason. This guy has been really, really quick. He's a very exciting rider. His peaks were brilliant. He was really going somewhere in the 2010s. When he got his bigger opportunities, the way they went showed that he wasn't going to be a world champion in MotoGP. But he was quick. He's very quick. He's quick again this year. I can see the logic of taking the drug ban side out. I can see the logic of going, if he's this quick, when he jumps back on the MotoGP bike, that'll get us a few results. That'll be worth the punt. But the other side is we often talk in this podcast about whether MotoGP's seen all it needs to from a rider. We talk about that in the context of Jack Miller. We know what his strengths and weaknesses are. We know he's not going to be MotoGP world champion. If his time in MotoGP is done now, I'd like to see him around longer. But you wouldn't say, well, that's a travesty. He's had his chance. Iannone only had his chance in MotoGP. He is a Grand Prix winner. He had factory seats. we know what we need to know about Iannone, and he is, in MotoGP terms now, middle-aged. But I wouldn't rule it out. And I think Pramac, if it ends up at Yamaha and hasn't got obvious rider choices, and given that previous relationship, I could see that happening on a punt.
But he doesn't really have development rider acumen, which also is, I think, part of
the opposite as well.
Yeah, part of the thinking for Yamaha. But it's just, we talk about the 4-year absence, and it's that, but also, what was the last proper good Andrea Iannone MotoGP season? 15?
Yeah.
15. Yeah, it's back in. It's very much back in Ducati, isn't it? It's a decade
and
ago.
that's the year that he T-boned his teammate.
Yeah, that would be 16.
Yeah.
Imagine the alternate universe in which that doesn't happen. Andrea Iannone gets the nod to lead factory Ducati over Andrea Dovizioso. All of MotoGP looks different right now, I suspect.
No, I think it ends up in the same point, but it's been a bit more eventful to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Well, I'd love to spend a weekend charting that, but it is a weekend I do not have, and nobody will give me the budget for it, frankly. So.
If he re-signs for a MotoGP team, Val, I will clear some time in your schedule so you can work out an alternate history where he got that ride. And if I do that, listeners, please can you read it to make it worth the time that I stuck Val on that, because I'll lose him for days with that one. Speaking of losing Val for days, we are losing you to Formula One this weekend. You're off to the Austrian.
That's a dramatic pause. Yeah, you made it sound like there's going to be people fist bumping, like, oh, he's gone from the pod now. He's going to four wheels.
We're lending you to Formula One for the Austrian Grand Prix this weekend. So we'll have a different third head on this podcast next week, who I'm looking forward to all of you meeting. Val will be chipping in with a few of his thoughts from the back of someone's car on the way out of the Austrian Grand Prix track, because he will not be able to help himself but keep up to date with MotoGP. So me, Simon, and somebody else will be back next week to talk about everything happening in an actual race, because although it's been eventful as anything with all the rider signings, we actually got the race this weekend. Simon is currently in France still, but I think about to drive to the Netherlands as soon as we hit stop on this recording.
That is about to change in a few minutes, yes.
So keep an eye, if you're part of the Members Club on Patreon or via the website, keep an eye on your notifications this weekend for your chance to throw in some questions for us to answer in the post-race podcast. Thank you for your company on this one. We'll be back with you soon after Assen at the start of next week.
The Athletic.